Welcome back. Last video posted yesterday, the day before, I can't remember now. The hinges are all mounted. The rivets are all in. Everything looks really good. One thing I didn't show you guys, I'll show you right now. I actually did a little more work yesterday without you. My apologies. I got the rest of the reinforcements installed. You can see those in there. There we go. That's a good shot of them. Those are the reinforcements inside the wingtips. So that is all done now. I had to go yesterday and buy some more backer rod because I ran out of the 1/2-inch backer rod I bought on Amazon. I bought this at Lowe's. All they had was 3/4 inch. Figured I could make it work. It did work. It's not as good. 1/2 inch is better, so if you're getting it, get the 1/2-inch stuff. Also, the stuff I bought off of Amazon was a lot more hot glue gun friendly than this was. This stuff melted like crazy trying to glue it. Not near as good. Don't recommend it. I suppose the link of this video, if anybody's interested, I can go throw a link to the Amazon backer rod I ordered. I'll put that in there. Use it if you want. If you don't, that's fine too. So today we are going to try and get the cutouts done for the fly LEDs or fly LEDs kit so I can get these mounted. And the reason we need to do cutouts is the back side of these boards, so we can get this lined up right. We have these giant resistors that are on here that need to clear, plus these heat sinks. These heat sinks are optional according to the directions. What the heat sinks do for you, and you can see I did add them, is these lights that act as strobes on here can also act as area floodlights. So when you're taxiing, instead of them flashing, which may or may not be helping you, you can turn these on as just bright white lights shining out around the wingtip. That could come in handy taxiing in some tight places or seeing the edge of a runway or a taxiway. So I put the heat sinks on because if they're going to run continuously, they need a heat sink to help cool them down. All that being said, I need to make cutouts in the wingtips to clear all of that so that these can mount. I have not fully committed or decided how I want to mount these yet. Fly LEDs says you can use double-sided tape, which I have the good VHB tape. According to their directions, they've had a set installed for well over 300 hours and haven't had an issue. The only downside I can see to that is if you want to take them off for something, you got to pry them and peel them off, possibly break something. I don't like that idea, so I may not do it. If you use screws and nut plates, the template has these areas marked in black where you can make holes for said screws and nut plates if you want to add them. I may go that route, I may not. If you do screws, they also tell you to be careful when you drill the hole through the pad areas on here to make the hole on the back side a little wider so that you don't accidentally cause a short between one side and the other of the circuit board. Looking at the side of it, I don't think that would be an issue because the pads they have marked out doesn't look like it has conductive material on either side. But regardless, whichever way we decide to go with this, I'll follow their recommendations. So yeah, it's nice to be moving on with the wingtips. That's all I'm going to try and get done today is just get these holes cut out, get these things lined up. If I have nut plates for it and I decide to go that route, maybe we'll go so far as to putting those in. These aren't going to get mounted permanently right now because there's a lot of other work that has to get done to these wingtips. Lots of sanding and shaping. There's a seam line all along this edge that has to get taken out and gone away. Lenses have to go on, but I don't think I'm going to do the lenses or the rest of that right now. I don't know. We'll see. I'm starting to run out of things to do. Once this is done, I can move on to closing out wingtips or the wingtip areas on the horizontal stab and the vertical stab. But that's really it. No other updates. Haven't heard anything from Vans about the fuselage kit yet. So guess we'll see what happens. Anyway, stick around. VoiceOver Tim will catch you up on what does or does not end up happening. And if you got any comments or questions, leave them down below. All right, welcome to the voiceover part. This went really quick, quicker than I thought it would, partially because I was at an impasse for how to mount the lights. I have decided I'm not going to use the VHB tape for the reasons I stated earlier. I don't like the idea of them being stuck on there, and if I had to take them off for something, possibly damaging them, trying to pry them off, that VHB tape is no joke. So I am going to use nut plates and screws. I do not have enough. I'm going to use number 6 nut plates and screws. I placed another order with Aircraft Spruce today to get some more nut plates, some screws for that, as well as some nut plates, screws, and Tinnerman washers for the lenses later on. So hopefully that'll all show up soon, and I can finish getting these lights mounted up so I can put them in, take them out, all that other good stuff. But I did get a lot more done than I thought I was going to get done today, just on the wingtips in general, or at least the right one. And we'll get to that here in a second. There you can see I was trimming the hole out per the template, and now it's just making final little clearances to allow room for those heat sinks that I pointed out earlier. They were hitting in a couple of spots along with part of the resistors, so there's plenty of room to work with. You really only need enough mounting pad to cover where those screws are going to go. Yeah, there you can see I'm going through the hardware right now trying to decide, do I have screws for this or not? It is nice having those holes in there now. I kind of wish I would have cut them even earlier, because now I have access into the wingtip through the hole while mounting the wingtip on the wing. That proved to be really helpful here just in a little bit, because what I decided to do next after I was done with this was get the wing, right wing, out of the cradle, lay it on a table, and attach the wingtip so I could start doing some final filling for the gap to get the gaps all centered and same thickness all the way across. So I needed it to be laying on a table for that, so gravity would work with me and not against me. I didn't have the camera on for the move, but you can imagine what that looked like. Right there, right as I was starting the camera, I was laying down some tape just on the metal surface of the wing. That way I didn't get any micro and resin on it. I also overlapped the tape on the top part of the hinge, so if any of the resin dripped down in there, it wouldn't glue this thing together permanently. I was very worried about that, even with the tape, so much so that once this was set up enough to where it wasn't going to be coming apart, I went ahead and pulled the wingtip off. So it was before it was fully cured, but it was set up enough that it wasn't going to move or change shape again. So yeah, all the prep is done. I had the pen out. I was just marking spots where I thought I needed to fill. Also, I was making some marks on spots that needed to be sanded down more. And the way you tell is just, you look at the line, you want a nice even gap all the way across. And if it's touching, you need to sand more to take away more of the wingtip. If it's too big of a gap, you need to fill it more to fill that in. And then to make a dead even gap all the way across, once I had this kind of filled, I used an X-Acto knife at first, but then I found this little spatula tiny tool thing that came with some set I bought a while back. It had nice rounded edges, and it's fairly thin, and it makes the perfect gap. So I just ran that along the edge before the epoxy was completely set up. In fact, I did it a few times just to make sure it stayed, and you'll see that here in a minute too. Right now I'm just filling that in, and that's the West Systems epoxy with the micro balloons. And I didn't want to walk away from it because, again, I didn't want this thing to glue itself together. There you see me with the X-Acto knife. So I stayed there, and as it set up, I just kept opening the lines back up. And this is fast setting epoxy. Once you mix it with enough micro or flocks, it sets really quick as compared to like when you just use it as resin for fiberglass. There's a fair amount of work. You can see me doing it down there at the leading edge. I'm sorry you didn't get a better view of that, but there's a fair amount of filling that needs to be done there to kind of bring that leading edge out so it matches the wing a little bit better. Here's an inside shot of the wing through the hole. So if you want to go back and pause that, you can look and see what the hinges actually look like when they're engaged for people that are trying to wrap their head around how this whole thing works. While this was setting up and I kept opening up those gaps, making it not glue itself together, I decided, since I'm standing there, I might as well start working on the seam line. There's a really thick fiberglass seam all the way down the edge and across the front of the wingtip. So I took that block sander there and I knocked down the bulk of it. I'll have to come back and hit it with regular block sander with some finer grit sandpaper later. There you see I'm opening the gaps again. After that set for a while and it was good enough to take off, I took the wingtip off so it wouldn't glue itself in place, got all the tape off, cleaned up the mess on the wing, and let this thing sit and fully cure. And now I'm just sanding it. And I didn't start the camera for the whole part of it, so you didn't get to see a lot of it, but trust me, it's a lot of sanding. Ran a nice long straight block along it, got the edge really nice and straight, threw some primer on it, and there it is. You can see the gap looks so much nicer now. There is a little bit of pitting in there that I'll have to get done with some body filler, but really happy. So here's the next thing. Trailing edge doesn't line up with the aileron, and this is a common problem. The wingtips run long. This is my shorter one, I think. I think the other one's actually even longer than this. But you need to trim the end off, which is very scary, and you want to make it flush with the aileron. Before I laid the wing down, I put the rigging plate in. So you see me lifting the aileron up, and that's pushing it up against the rig plate so that I know that that's where the aileron is going to sit when it's in the neutral position. I set the laser up, got it lined up perfectly with the trailing edge of the aileron and the flap, and then made a line where it crossed the trailing edge. And now I'm using the cutoff wheel to just cut that entire tip off. And yeah, it's scary and it's really messy. Trying to go as straight as I can. I'm also cutting on this side of the line because it's really thick, and if you want the two pieces to mate together, first you're going to have to split it open like you see me doing there, plus go up the side a little bit. And then I'm going to come back in at an angle on both sides and put a bevel cut in it so that when I squeeze them together, they make a fairly decent taper to a point. So the cutting actually went really well, even though it was a little scary. It was a lot harder getting that end. That end did not want to squeeze together. I had to cut a fair amount of it out to get it flexible enough to squeeze back down together. But once I got that, I mixed up some more resin with flocks this time. Fairly thick, should be good and strong. And then I buttered it in between the pieces, used a whole bunch of clamps and clamped it together. And then I pulled the clamps off one at a time, just making sure I had a good bead all the way in there so I can sand on it later. And it's just slightly bigger than its final form. That's intentional. I want to be able to sand this down to the line and have it match the taper and the line for the aileron. The other thing is when you're putting this back together, you want to take a good look at it and make sure you didn't put a twist or a warp into the wingtip. I don't think I did. It looks like it's pretty straight. Nice thing about fiberglass, even though it's messy, is if I did do that, at least it's easy to go back and cut it open and do it again. If you want to see the final product, you're going to have to check out the next video because it is out there curing right now. So I'm not going to get to sanding it until tomorrow, and I'll probably put some micro in there and try and make it pretty after that. So come back for the next one. Thanks for stopping by. Like, subscribe, all that other good stuff, and leave your questions below. I will see y'all later.